welcome to the Mental and Emotional Health Awareness live stream. And I am thrilled to have with me today Lynn DeCarmine, CEO and founder of the Extraordinary Being Movement, as well as the author of the 1% More collaborative. Just an amazing collection of inspirational stories. And this is an amazing being right here. He's an example of the Extraordinary Being Movement. And I am so thrilled to have you here. Welcome, Lynn. And,
thank you.
Thank you for joining me here. I am honored.
So am I. You're an amazing person, Kimberly. I love our conversation. You bring so much energy and vibration to everything you do. You're just a shining light. Like I'm making you blush.
Yeah, you are. And I believe that this is actually one of your gifts, because that's energy that you're infusing into the other person. And I love it. I just watched you do wonderful interviews with some other amazing people. And you know, the energy that you bring into the world, into where you are, is just so contagious. This is why I wanted to have you here and to be able to just share whatever comes out of you.
Yeah.
For our listening audience. The reason I created this live stream series is to bring awareness to people who are just not being able to see the light in the world, and suffering mentally and emotionally. I want to give this disclaimer before we get started and go further. This is a general discussion about mental health, and it is not to be interpreted as specific advice in a specific situation. Every situation can be unique, and this is not intended to replace your therapist or a medical doctor. Okay, I just want to get that out there. But we have some wonderful things to share, and just know that they are a perfect supplement to whatever you're already doing. And the more you do this, I believe the better you'll feel, and the less you'll need anything else.
I agree. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's first start about how you came to be this amazing being, this extraordinary being, how you developed and how you came to want to create this movement.
I got beat up a lot. You pretty much from life experiences. Growing
up. That's a testimony to suffering with a purpose.
It really is. You know, as a kid, I was bullied in school quite often for being different in some ways. I'm always a kid at heart. So while other kids were going into sports and other activities, I was still wearing my superhero shirts. I was still going home playing with my Thundercats, my G.I. Joes, my He-Mans. I love my Saturday morning cartoons. So I dressed the part. You know, I was not shameful until I went to school, and then I got picked on. You know.
But the good thing is that you had that foundation from home, that you weren't ashamed to go out and be who you are.
It was tough at times. It was tough to, and don't forget, the world has changed a great deal. There wasn't social media back then. So for myself, I didn't have all that additional extra pressure or humility that I could possibly get from the kids posting pictures or really getting in on you, because it was just on the recess playground or at lunch, when they're not being monitored by a teacher. But I always like to say that I've paved the way at times for the other kids who are growing up now, able to wear their superhero shirts with pride and be able to do those things and not get picked on, because I took a lot of that. I mean, even in my school photos from my yearbook, you'll see me with a superhero shirt on, which is, I laugh because some of the shirts I still have. I have about 20, 30 shirts and I still wear them today.
Well, you're a superhero.
I know. And that's the way
That was
I,
your, that was the, you know, what you knew you were growing into, I believe. That's my
yeah,
interpretation.
yeah. Well, it's also, it was my escape. And, for me, my home life, I came from a good family, but my father was the type of individual that if you didn't get it the first time, you were stupid. He put a
So
lot
many
of pressure.
people can relate to that.
Yeah,
So many.
yeah. So
Uh-oh, we lost your, but you lost your video, your audio. We lost your audio. I don't know if you can, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Yeah, we lost your audio. Can you hear me?
Kimberly, can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Perfect. All right, my headset died, so I apologize to you.
That's okay. It's been working hard this morning.
That's I luckily I have backups. Now I can use my other microphone. What I was sharing was that growing up for myself, my superheroes were my escape. Growing up with my father, he was the type of individual that was taught a certain way from his father, who was probably taught a certain way from his father, and the way that my father taught was that if you didn't get it the first time, you weren't very smart, and so that really, and over time of constantly hearing that, because I was a kid, I didn't know any better. I didn't really want to go to work with my father on the weekends. He would wake my brother up at 6 o'clock in the morning and be like, "You're coming with me," and I'm like,
Wow.
"What?"
What kind of work did he do?
He was a carpenter.
Okay, well, that's a great skill to have to learn as a
Contractor,
young kid,
yes.
even. Yeah.
Yeah, so he would take my brother and I on these jobs to learn things, but again, it was a very stressful situation at times for us because we didn't get it the first time. We were stupid and
A lot of
incompetent,
pressure.
and
Yeah.
we started to do that. The one thing my brother and I picked up really well, we learned how to clean really well because we knew the faster we cleaned up, the faster we can go home. So at the end of the day, we were fast because
That's
we wanted to
awesome.
go back to mom and go play with our video games, have dinner, and be done with this thing. So we learned quickly how to clean. So I'm super fast now with things.
That's way
But
cool.
yeah, for that pressure growing up, you know, over time started to make me think that I wasn't smart, that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't have abilities to do what I can do. And it wasn't until later in my years as I started to mature and grow and take some chances that I was able to push myself, be able to go beyond my comfort zone. And one thing that really was a big impact in my life was my uncle.
Mm.
My uncle was back in the day was one of the original firewalkers or experienced the firewalking with Tony Robbins.
Yes, I remember now.
And when I was 16 years old, I remember my uncle knew I was having, growing up, becoming a boy, becoming a man. I had issues dealing with my father at that time frame.
Were you able to share with him?
Yeah, and I was sharing with him, and he, told me about his experience and how powerful the mind is. And
Mm.
he taught me that you have the ability to overcome this. You have the ability to have the strength inside you based upon what he learned to overcome these things. And he also came from a father who was very stern, very hard on him as well. So he could understand and relate. He was more
Yeah.
empathetic to what I was going through. And he knew the type of child I was back then. I was very introverted. I was soft spoken.
Probably could relate to you.
Cared a lot, and I was hurt a lot by the
Mm.
experiences that I was experiencing through my father's way of being. And it wasn't until about a year ago when my father passed away that
Mm.
I had to go through his things. And I got to understand him better, and I got to understand myself better through that experience. And thank God that I had an opportunity a few years back where my father and I made amends. We talked to
Mm.
father, and
Oh, wow.
I offered forgiveness and understanding to him. I called him when I had this conversation, thanking him. I didn't call him out of the blue just to yell at him or to be like, "You're wrong, I'm right." I called him to thank him
Wow.
for the gifts that he did give me,
Yes.
and
And I think
that was,
go ahead,
yeah.
sorry.
And one of the things my father was big on was common sense. Common sense. I mean, he feed that into my brother and I in various ways. And some things he said, like, "Hey, if you're going out the door and you see the garbage full, take it out with you." Just little things like that. And so I thanked him for that. I thanked him for giving me the ability to have common sense, to think and process things as I went along, and also
Yeah.
his work ethic.
Yeah.
My father was a workaholic. Um, I have become a workaholic at times, but I've been self-aware that to pull myself back a bit, to
Yes.
smell the roses, to experience life, to balance things a little bit more. But that also took me a long time to do as well. But I have a very strong work ethic. I work hard at what I do, and it was because of him.
Yes. And would you say that your success is the package of all of those experiences, good, bad? None of them are bad, but a lot of people would think of them as bad, especially right now if they're in that and they can't see a way out. They would think that that's not good because they're not
Of,
feeling good.
of course, yeah, because they lack the resources and knowledge to be able to work that out. And that's why it's always great to have a coach, a mentor,
Absolutely.
somebody outside from your family and
Yes.
your friends to really hear something that you're not hearing, to uncover those blind spots that are
Yes.
really holding you back. Because if
Yes.
something is holding you back in one area of your life, it's holding you back in all those other areas as well. And
Yes.
people don't realize that.
Yes.
Not until you become more self-aware of who you are will you really uncover that and get that self-discovery.
Yeah. I couldn't have said that better. And I just believe that the universe, this is how I see the universe bringing up a harvest of coaches to help people evolve from into the next level,
Hmm.
because what you experienced is not uncommon. Every person living today has had some kind of trauma in their life that they've experienced as a child at the hands of their parents, and their parents were doing their best. We're evolving, and as we with each generation, we're learning new skills, we're understanding ourselves better and deeper, and this is how we evolve. And so it's no one's to blame. It's just a part of our human evolution into more loving beings, into extraordinary beings, as your movement is called. I love it. And what you just described is the meat and potatoes, is the what makes the difference in people's lives.
Yes.
Having come from there and overcome those things, or grown through them, and transformed your life basically.
Mhm.
And so maybe you can tell us about some of those transformation experiences.
Yeah, no, I've been reflecting the last few days about a lot of things. Um, and I realized that if it wasn't for my father, I wouldn't be here where I am today. Even though he may not have done the things the right way, but they still turned out the right way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I love the way you said that, the way you put it. Not the right way in our in our way of thinking, but the right way in the overall universal way of thinking and seeing things through the eyes of our evolutionary experience, which it makes all things right.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I love my father. He's my father. You know, I mean, I have liked all the things that he did, or the way he presented himself, or the way he said things, but he was still my father, and I still care about him. I still care about him today. I feel very lost, um, with him even passing from last year. I would like to have experienced more, but again, everything happens for a reason. In the way I view, because the death of my father, opened up something new inside of me now that I don't think will ever change. I had to leave where I lived in Arizona and go live in Ohio at a house I've never been to, go through all my father's things, and take the responsibility of figuring it all out. And this is my first time ever, dealing with a death of a parent.
Wow. Wow.
And I
That was
had
the
no idea.
transformational. Hmm.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
totally out of my comfort zone. I
Yeah.
had no idea what I was doing or who to talk to or where to go. And luckily,
Wow.
I did have a few family members who stepped in and said, "Hey, we've been here before. This is what you need to do. I can't help you because you're the oldest. This is your responsibility, but I can guide you in call the attorney, go look for this, check these areas for documentation, prepare this." So I was grateful that I had those things, those people that reached out
Sure.
to me, that knowledge that I was lacking. So it was a very emotional experience. I was up and down a lot because I was living in his home,
And
and
I imagine you heard his voice in your head a lot
yeah, I mean, I
about
felt
how you're dealing with
his
things.
at times I felt his presence there still, where little things were happening. Something I would mention somebody's name and I heard a bell go off.
Mm.
Things of that nature. Sometimes when I slept, I felt like somebody was watching me. For a couple of days.
Yes.
So it was my mind
Yes.
playing with me, or if that was something happening that he was still there watching over me in that experience. And through that, it really showed me what type of leader I can become.
Mm.
How I
Yes.
can
I was waiting for that.
yeah,
Yes.
the type of leader I am, and I didn't recognize it. I really didn't see my. I
At
mean,
that time.
I know I
Yeah.
can lead, but I don't usually take that role immediately. But at that point, I had to, and I had to deal with big things, and
Yes.
and I felt scared, but I also felt empowered. I
Yes.
felt like if I can do this, I can do anything. I can keep pushing myself
Look at you.
more and more by doing that 1% more, and that's how I kind of got my book put together a little bit because I kept pushing myself. I like Len, you 1% more. You may not have the energy to do it all today, but just organize this today. Go
Yes.
for this person today. Do the
Mm.
things.
That is a perfect segue into your book because that's a powerful experience that you just had. And what came to my mind as you were sharing that is how many people are going through that same kind of
Mhm.
experience. I mean, that same experience, but need to get the inspiration to go through it
Yes.
victoriously, because most people have those experiences and they get stuck there. They
Hmm.
get stuck there. And so anyone who has been stuck, you would be a great inspiration to them to be able to get through it. And your book is a beautiful example. And of course, your coaching service. Well, let's start with your book.
Yeah, yeah. The book was an idea which was based off the podcast show that my partners and I have called the Extraordinary Being Movement, where we interview people all over the world to hear about their failures, their successes, to have them talk about their strategies, what they did differently to get them from point A to point B, or make them go from ordinary to extraordinary. Because we all have our own unique gifts, but we forget about them. We push them down. Life sometimes, you know, just dumps on them and hides them, and we don't recognize them anymore. But we all are unique and special in our own way, and that's what the movement is about: is to create a personal transformational movement for personal growth and achievement. Because we all have that. We all have the ability to succeed. We
I
all have
love it. I
the
love it. This is the kind of stuff that we need in our world today.
yes,
It's like the remedy for where we are, and Uh, so I'm just so excited to be able to share this with the world.
I appreciate it.
So you shared it through the podcast first, and then you said this needs to go out into a book form.
Yeah, it was an idea that I've always had. I've always wanted to write a book. I just didn't know how to go about doing it. And I felt writing a full book on my own for my first one would be a little overwhelming. So I reached out to the guests on the show. I pitched them this idea. The idea wasn't fully formed. You know, I had a general idea. And so I talked to them. And I was able to get over 20 authors,
Awesome.
coaches, business leaders, coaches, professionals of various types to work with me on this collaborative book. And I like to do things unique and different. So I wanted to make sure I made the book unique and different as well. You know, a lot of collaboration books just have the person's chapter and then they move on to the next person's little chapter and so forth. What I did to make my book unique was that I based it upon the 4 pillars of the extraordinary being movement, or the 4 pillars I use in my coaching, which is awareness, growth, action, and impact. So the way I wrote the book was I broke it down to 4 sections. I wrote the beginning chapters of each one. Some of them have multiple chapters, but the beginning sections of each one. And then I filled in with the authors who I felt also could expand upon the idea of awareness even more.
Yes.
So I broke them down into 4 different sections to really make a huge impact on the reader. And what I also was doing when I was writing it was I was writing my section, and then I started putting questions. I'm like, all right, they're reading it, but I want but the only way things work, you know, any way to learn something, to really retain it, is to put it in action, to go do it. So when I was writing, I just started to write questions at the end. You know, what's your thoughts on this? How would you do this? How would you do that? And I realized, oh, I didn't have the authors do that. So I went back and read everybody's chapter, and I added questions for them as well to really emphasize their chapter so I can have a uniform book that brought the synergy necessary so people could be in action to start making a difference in their life.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
how that works. So I wrote this book, and it was exciting. It was different. It was unique. And the crazy part about it is that I start writing it before my father passed away, and then I had to put everything on hold.
Mm.
And after
Mm.
I got back, I had to start writing it, and I had 2.5. I had about 2 months to do it, so I wrote it in 2.5 months after edits and all the other things done. And if it wasn't for my father's passing, I don't think I would have the book I have today.
Wow. Of course. Yes.
So
So that's how the universe works. That things, we think the person, the natural thinking is, I have to stop and I'm never going to get it done. And then because they got to get through that other hard thing, what you had going to Ohio and all the things that you had to do there was very hard. I mean, so that was building that muscle in
yes,
you to be able to come back and be able to complete the book. That is just an amazing story,
yeah,
a feat.
and I talk about my father in the book. I talk about growing up and what it was like. I talk about the things that I was going through and how I had to step up as the firstborn son to manage things.
Wow.
And something that my grandfather said to me when I was younger, which has always stuck with me. I don't know why it resonated with me, but he always said to me, "You will never become a man until your father passes away." And when that happened, I was like, "Wow, I get what he's saying now."
Yeah.
We all
Gives it a whole new dimension and meaning in
it
this
does.
meaning.
It really does. Because for me now, I have to step up to the plate in a different way.
Yeah.
So not thinking that of what my grandfather said to now my father passing away, like I said, my experience in life now has changed. My perspectives have changed. My priorities have changed. I'm putting myself out there even more now. I'm not living life anymore. I'm living life for the experiences of life.
And appreciating those
I
experiences. I
very,
can see that. Yeah.
yeah, very much so. I'm appreciating everything in my life more and more because I see we go through our stages of life where where oh, nothing's ever going to happen to me. I'm great. I'm okay.
Invincible.
I'm young. I'm invincible. Then we get to the next stage. Oh, life started to settle in a little bit more, and then you get to another stage that's like, oh, I used to go to and weddings and baby
Funerals.
showers and stuff
Oh,
like
baby
that.
shower.
And now I'm going to funerals. Life starts to change, or graduations and things like that, where people I knew are changing, and leaving, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because I talk to my best friend at times. I'm like, dude, I can't believe we known each other for 30 years already. It feels weird and I know we both talk to each other like we're 16 still. We still talk to each other the same way, but we're grown men now. We're adults, and sometimes it's hard to even think about it when we say it. Because
Yeah.
I don't think of them that way. I just think of them as us being goofballs as 16-year-olds, going and have fun, going on little adventures, sneaking out of the parents' house, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it puts life in a different perspective. But I live for the
Absolutely.
experiences now.
Perspective is everything.
Yes.
Perspective and perception.
Mm-hmm.
Those two, if those are the areas where we can experience probably the most growth and transformation is when we really get real with those, our perspectives and what we're perceiving.
Yeah.
And but the that camaraderie that you have for 30 years with your friends, it just, would you say it really kind of helps you to center back to where you come from and where you are now, appreciating that growth.
Yeah. Yeah. My friend and I, we talk about our experiences and the things that we've accomplished in our lives. And sometimes it's hard to believe, especially, like I said, the two of us still think we're 16 at times. And like, oh, I can never imagine you doing that. And I can never imagine you doing that. And both of us coming into our own in our own ways based upon of our experiences from our childhoods growing up and how we are.
Yeah.
So it's great to see the growth that the two of us have had over the years in our friendship and in our families, as well as our personal growth. So
Mhm. And to have someone who can appreciate it, like to see where you've come from and to be there with you kind of along the way, because like you said, you've shared your stories along the way and you've watched each other to grow. So that's a special bond.
yes,
And a lot of people don't have that. But I wanted to say, there's a lot of people who also grew up and um, had the similar experiences, and having a coach like yourself to be able to relate to them is so, it's like, I think that's what attracts the coach, the client to the coach, and the coach to the client. That when the
right,
student is ready, the teacher will appear, and they have no idea that teacher has been prepared just for them, just as they have been prepared to work with that coach.
yeah,
It's just a beautiful relationship and experience, and I'm amazed at the universe's work in doing this. It is, to me, is just so amazing, and I know people have no idea. They
correct,
have no idea that this is what's happening, and so for someone who is listening or may listen, what would you, what would you want to say to them?
Um, Everything in life happens for a reason.
You said everything happens for,
Yes, everything in life happens for a reason.
absolutely, yes,
We may
yes,
not see it in that moment,
yes, yes.
but there is something positive to come out of that experience.
Amen. I agree. Amen.
And it may take, sometimes it may take a couple of years to really learn what you were supposed to learn out of that. Because I believe, people come and go in your life either for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And they show up at the right time for a right reason.
Right time for the right reason.
But you just have to be patient and listen. And if you keep making that mistake over and over, you keep attracting those type of people until you learn that lesson.
Until you learn that lesson, exactly.
Yes,
That's
you see
so
that
true.
pattern. Yes, if you see a pattern in your life of why something isn't working, you're not listening. Let's say for example, with relationships. If you keep dating somebody who's toxic, every relationship it might be a new phase, but they still bring those same toxic traits. And not until you say, I've had enough, I'm going to stop and cut that off, you're going to be stuck there. And that's a pattern. And that's a pattern you need to be aware of. Because I've been there. And once I realized it and I said, I've had enough, I need to change something about me for whatever reasons because I'm attracting these people. And once I stopped, new opportunities opened up, new doors opened up, new people were coming to my life that were lifting me up, that were supporting me,
Yes.
that were taking me to the next level, not putting me down, not seeing
Yes.
my value, not seeing my worth. Because I knew what I was worth. And sometimes I would, lower myself to somebody else who doesn't value themselves. And I would get frustrated and angry with me. Say, why am I doing this to myself? I know what I'm worth. And in relationships that I were, and I always try to raise that person. But sometimes they're just there because that's where they see themselves. That's, and there's nothing I can do about that. Other than go.
I love that because that's absolutely true. But the question that came to my mind, how did you know what needed to be changed? How did you figure that out?
I'm a very self-aware person. I've learned and trained myself, read multiple books, taken courses. So I always ask myself, what's happening? I don't say why me anymore. Why me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Victim mindset when you're saying that constantly. So I always ask myself, what is going on in this situation? What's happening to me? Where have I felt this feeling before?
Ah.
Yes.
Yes.
Is it me or is it them? So I do a lot of questioning to myself, and I take the time to think about what it is.
Yeah. And so if someone came to you because they were feeling stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and they were either in their relationship pattern, they saw that there was a pattern, but they just couldn't figure out how to change it. How would you help them?
Sure, if they're having an issue and they were stuck.
They were stuck.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we'll figure out what really is the issue. Is it really a relationship issue or is it really an issue?
Getting to the root cause.
Getting to the root cause of what is really going on.
Yeah.
And then start looking at numerous things: your belief system, your values, your past experiences, your familyhood. We would start really trying to, kind of the way I like to look at it is that everyone's an onion, and you just start peeling those layers.
Layers,
one to figure out
Yeah.
what the root cause is. And then, then that's where you really find the transformation, because you don't realize that, oh, it was from this one incident where somebody said this about me and it's just been stuck in my head. Then we have to go through the process of changing that belief system and
And you
having
have some amazing tools to do that, right? You
yeah,
do.
I do it through
Yeah.
various different things that various tools, like for example, neuro linguistic programming, or what's also called NLP.
Yes.
There's tools and resources in there to help you eliminate your limiting beliefs. I use cognitive behavior therapy as another one. Really ask
Cognitive
behavioral therapy,
behavioral therapy. Uh-huh.
just
Great.
because that's a great way to help you continuously ask questions, digging into
Yeah.
being who you are and what you have. So
Mm.
it's all coming down to what I like to say is asking the right questions,
Yes.
and figuring it out from there, and
That,
going through that process. And everybody's unique and different in their own way. So, one tool and technique might work on one person, while it may not work on the next person. So we have to discover what works best to really draw that out and face, and for you to also learn how to face it. Nobody wants to be accountable.
yes.
Nobody wants to face the harsh reality that something you might have been thinking all the years was a lie, and that you've
I
been
think
lying to yourself. And it's just,
that is probably the almost the number one value of having a coach is
mm-hmm,
someone who cares about you, and they know that their job is to hold you accountable, and because they know it's going to be for your best good.
yes,
And they're paying you. I mean, that's what if you pay a coach, that's what you're paying them for, is to hold you accountable, because you need it. You need it. Sometimes the friends will not do it because they don't want to lose your friendship, but your
sure,
coach, that's what they're there for. And so, I mean, one of the primary things is because that is how people stay stuck. No
yes,
accountability, not accountability for the thing that's going to make the difference,
mm-hmm,
or the things that are going to make the difference. And so that's wonderful. For every person, I believe, for every coach, there's thousands of people who need you as their coach. And for every person who is stuck, there is a coach that is for them, that can help them.
yeah,
I, I
and there's plenty of coaches out there. But one thing I like to tell people is, I may not be the coach for you, but you need to find that person that resonates with you,
yeah,
because that's the
yeah,
person you can listen to. That's the person that you feel connected to. That's going to transform your life.
yes,
And I'm
yes,
not for everybody the way I coach, and I understand that. But for those who I coach, their lives change.
absolutely. And for like I said, there's thousands of people out there that do need you as their
Mhm.
coach. So that the goal is to get this out there so that those people can find you, because you are an extraordinary being. And I'm just excited that you have been prepared for just such a task, or just such the honor and sacred work to do with those who are being called to you. And I believe that's how it happens. We're called to each other. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I see it like that. Yeah. And so, is there anything else that you want people to know? We want to be able to. I'm going to let them know how they can get your book, but I'll let you share whatever about it you'd like to share.
Yeah, sure. Again, my book that I have is called 1% More: The Hidden Force to Creating Extraordinary Results in Life and Business. It's a beautiful collaboration book. I have over 20 different authors in it sharing about their life and their stories. I like to call it the no fluff book, because I focus and give you tips, strategies, and techniques without all the extra mumbo jumbo in between. I'm very clear cut. Um, but it's not a dry book. It is a book that will make a difference. A lot of people resonate with it in different ways, like because of the experiences of all these other people that collaborated with me in this book. And that's, again, it's called 1% More, The Hidden Force to Creating Extraordinary Results in Life and Business. It is on Amazon. It has become an international bestseller, which was very exciting. And it's first of many books that are going to be out there that I'm going to be writing. So I'm excited about that. And you can also visit our website, theextraordinarybeingmovement.com, to see people we've interviewed, to listen to some of the podcasters that we have as well, and meet some of the coaches that might resonate with you on there as well, and hear about our movement and what we're up to, and learn more about the 4 pillars that we talk about, which is awareness, growth, action, and impact. And see what type of impact you can make on yourself and the world around you. Because we want to be able to help build leaders.
I wanted to share the book. Okay, it's not working. I'm sorry. I wanted to share, but you can see the book. Get the book. Get the book. You know, it's one of those must reads. You know, it's like Chicken Soup for the Soul was an extraordinary book in its time. This is an extraordinary book in its time, and I highly recommend it. I've just began to skim it, and just already it's been a rich experience so far. So thank you for sharing your book and your gift. And I love the uniqueness that you put to it. That too was even extraordinary. That the way you designed it, like you said, there's a lot of collaboratives coming out. And like you said, they usually have each author has their chapter, each contributor has their chapter or has their page. And this was done in its unique way with your signature on it and the 4 pillars. I love the pillars and the of awareness and and
Awareness, growth, action, and impact. Yeah, and like I said, I wanted to make sure the book. Yeah, I wanted to make sure the book stood the test of time, and that's why I made it into as a workbook as well, so you can really get the value out of the book and learn.
A workbook. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So definitely want to get that book. You will. It's well worth the time and the money. It's just it's a giveaway, really. It's a giveaway and a work of art and a tool to get you to a place where I believe you can see where you need to go next. And it will likely be with a coach. I think that today, coaches are like doctors were back in the day, you know, when everybody had to go to the doctor, you know, there's something's going on with them, well, you go to the doctor. Well, nowadays, I believe the coaches are the doctors of today. Not so much that they're fixing what's wrong with you, because there really isn't anything wrong with you. There's just, we're coming to be aware that we're here to grow, and coaches help people grow. I mean, that's what they did that's what they do in the sports industry. They help these athletes to be their best. And so now that's just been broadened into every humanity. Each one of us is a cell in the body of humanity, and we each have a coach to help us be the best cell we can be to make the humanity the healthiest it can be. That's just my analogy of how we are evolving.
Yes, and I agree with you. I believe everybody should have a coach of some sort, depending on what they need to be working on, either career coach, performance coach.
And sometimes multiple coaches, for each area.
Yeah, and I myself have multiple coaches for various
Same here.
areas of my life. Yeah. So because they all have something unique that they bring to the table that I need.
Exactly.
That's my personal growth, because that's what life is lifelong. Life is learning.
Life is learning.
It's always growth and things to learn. You know, when you stop learning, that's when you have a problem. That's
That's
where
so
you just
true. So
you
true.
just get stuck and you just don't know what to do anymore. But if you continue growing and learning, that's where the power is at. Power is through knowledge
Absolutely.
and experiences.
I think I realized about 20 years ago that we live because we're born. We're born to live, and we live to grow. That's how I mean, we have the example of the baby being born, and what does it do? It grows
Yeah.
with, and with very little added to it. The more it has, though, the more nurturing, the more love, the more encouragement it has, the greater it grows. And then we're here to grow into greatness,
Yes.
and to make an impact on the world. And
Yes.
that's our purpose. And that's why I love your pillars, because they're so right on, with life, and the foundation of, or a guideline as to why we're here, what we're here to do, and
Yes.
how do we do it.
Correct.
How do we go about that? And yeah, I believe we're just evolving into this knowledge and awareness. And pretty soon, in another 10 years, it'll probably be commonplace, second nature. Like today, like I said, people go to the doctor when something's going on with them. Well, when they feel stuck in an area, they know they've got to go and find their coach, and they'll be attracted to the right one. Well, it has been truly an honor and a pleasure to have you here with me today, and to allow you to share with the world what you're about, what your experiences. And I know you have shared publicly about your dad and your experience with your dad. I think I saw that on LinkedIn, a post that you shared. And just being able to be vulnerable and transparent in that way is so powerful in your coaching practice, because people can relate, they can connect in those areas, because they have that experience, but they didn't have the courage, or just couldn't find it in them to share it. But now when you do share it, that gives that connection and brings them to you.
Yeah. And like I said, my father has been a big impact on my life in multiple different ways, both good and both, we'll say bad.
Growth.
In growth, that's a better way to put it. And for myself, after going through things, I have decided that I feel that my best use of coaching is helping men, empowering men in dealing with these issues that they are possibly suffering in silence about, that they don't
They
have.
are. Oh my goodness, they are.
They don't have the resources. So I'm, building this community to help men, because I've been through everything. I was just say everything, but I have been through a lot of the experiences, from marriage, divorce, dealing with my children, through, the type of relationship I have with my parents, especially even with my father. So I can relate to a lot of the issues that they're facing, and also, how I suffered, in silence, thinking that I wasn't good enough, that I don't have the ability to move myself forward. But we all do. Yeah. We all have it inside of us, and a lot of us hunger for it, but too afraid to act on it. So I help them, find their purpose, their get some clarity, and help them build better relationships, not only for themselves, but with their partner and the rest of the world around them, so they become a better man and stop lying to themselves.
This is wonderful. I'm, so happy to hear that this support that you're able to provide, because there are millions, literally, of men out there needing that kind of support. And so I think this is just the beginning of something really wonderful that people will realize that they have available to them. And Again, I thank you for sharing your story, yourself, and there anything, one last thing anything that you would change or that you would like to see change in the world? Oh, I mean, I said in the world, but you can certainly take it down to one thing if you like. You can narrow that down as much as you want.
Sure. What I'd love to see is just people being more kind to each other. Really, taking that moment, just be in other person's shoes to understand. You can't really, their experience is definitely going to be different than yours, but have some sympathy, be empathetic to them in some way, and just listen and be kind.
Excellent. And I just want to say, because this was the first thing that came to my mind when you said that, because what we see and what we react to in other people is a reflection of ourselves. And so to be when you do that kindness, begin with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Begin with yourself, because that's going to be able to, then you can give it to others.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Shalyn, for
you.
being here. Get the book, 1% More. It's a must-have. And check out the podcast, and I'll have those details on where you can access them if you're watching the video. And if you're not, stay tuned. I will get those details. Actually, you want to just give those details about how they can get to your podcast, how they can get your book, and how they can get your services as a coach.
Yeah. I'll just make it real easy. Just go over to the website. It's called extraordinarybeingmovement.com. And we have everything listed on that page. You can reach out to me directly and contact me through the website. You can also get information about the book. It has a direct link to Amazon so that you can click there and take a look at the reviews, and begin the first step of transforming your life. It's a journey. So there's no quick fix. It takes time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us, and we will look forward to hearing your questions, your comments, and even snide remarks, whatever. We'll accept them all. And have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.